Hi, I'm from the Customer Success Engineering team. In this series of short videos, we're taking a look at the baseline configuration for Deception Standard. This is part 3, Deployment and Operationalization. Let's start by talking about deception strategies. Deception strategies allow you to build and deploy sophisticated environments in a single click using internal or zero trust decoys, as well as customizing and managing these environments by modifying the deployed strategies. This allows you to very quickly configure decoys of all types, with predefined personalities built based on different types of servers, applications, and users. Strategies can be customized if needed, but deception comes with pre-configured strategies that map to various business use cases for detecting threats. One deception strategy in particular that should be looked at is the one called Default Automatic. This strategy includes 15 decoys covering a large variety of use cases and is designed to allow you to quickly and easily roll out Deception Standard in your production environment without impacting the environment itself. It is strongly recommended that you leverage this strategy to deploy Deception Standard. Once you have used the Default Automatic strategy to get started, you may wish to deploy additional decoys. This table shows the ease of deployment, prerequisites, use cases, and teams involved in deploying each type of decoy available in Deception Standard. Threat intelligence and endpoint decoys are the least complex decoy types to deploy, along with the zero trust decoys that leverage ZPA. Network and Active Directory decoys have slightly more prerequisites and require involving more teams, making their deployment slightly more complex. One additional configuration step you'll need to take after deploying decoys is to add a DNS-A record in your external DNS server to connect threat intelligence decoys to the public IP of the deception cloud. This is required so attackers can reach your threat intelligence decoys from the public internet. Now that we've covered decoys, let's talk about alerts and alerting rules. To start off, let's briefly discuss threat parse. Threat parse is a technology that performs natural language reconstruction of attacks by summarizing and translating log information into plain English. It also links this information to the MITRE attack framework and includes the risk scores assigned to these attacks. The information on the threat parse details page helps your analysts understand what attackers are trying to accomplish. Deception Standard comes with several pre-configured threat parse rules to help them easily identify threats, prioritize the most pressing ones first, and take necessary actions to stop lateral movement. An important thing to note is that deception can be integrated with various third-party data enrichment solutions, such as Abuse IPB, VirusTotal, or IP Info, to add relevant contextual information to security events generated in the Deception Admin Portal. It is recommended that you do this where possible, so that the Deception Admin Portal security events can be as useful as possible to your security team, so they can more effectively deal with attackers. Orchestration rules automate actions performed in the Deception Admin Portal. These are triggered by log or threat parse events, and it's recommended to leverage threat parse events whenever possible for these rules. Orchestration rules can take several actions, such as marking known false positives as safe, tagging specific events, and most importantly, sending alerts via email when a rule is triggered. This is vital to ensure that your security teams are alerted as early as possible when deception detects an attacker interacting with the decoy. Here are the alert conditions we recommend you configure for each decoy type. These rules leverage threat parse events to generate alert emails. Configuring these 4 rules will allow your security teams to be alerted whenever decoys of each specific type are accessed. This ensures they are made aware of threats as soon as they start interacting with decoys, and that they are able to proactively address these threats. Once you've deployed your decoys and configured your rules, you will want to validate that these are working as configured. As an example, here are some of the ways you can trigger various decoy types to generate deception alerts. For endpoint decoys, you can use a credential harvester, such as Lasagne, to retrieve credentials stored on a local computer. For threat intelligence and network decoys, you can simply access the services running on these decoys like an attacker would while performing recon. Finally, for Active Directory decoys, PowerSploit scripts can be used to perform AD enumeration. You can then access deception reports inside the Deception Admin portal. The Investigate tab will allow you to see a map of active decoys along with information about users who have accessed them, depicting all events, decoys, decoy connectors, and app connectors, and how these entities are connected to each other and to the Zscaler Deception Admin portal. Deception will assign a risk score to specific attackers and track them across decoys. As the attacker accesses more decoys using different techniques, their risk score will increase. The Investigate module includes the following benefits: visibility into attacker behavior through real-time events and detailed view of the impacted entities. Comprehensive forensic analysis with access to threat parse data, event logs, network telemetry, and evidence files. Accelerated response capabilities, enabling security teams to take swift actions such as containment, blocking, or marking threats as safe. Accuracy in threat detection by correlating attacker activities across multiple deception entities. Together, these capabilities ensure that security teams are warned early and empower them to act decisively before threats escalate, increasing your overall security posture through integrated threat intelligence and streamlined workflows. To conclude this video, here are a few concrete recommendations for creating and managing decoys to ensure they have the greatest possible chance of luring attackers. First, make sure you are using realistic host names for your network decoys, which match the format of the host names for real machines. Network decoys should ideally appear indistinguishable from real network resources, so leveraging things such as a company alias or location name in a format that matches real resources will increase the believability of these decoys. This will help make these decoys more enticing and make it more likely that attackers will interact with them and trigger events and alerts. For Zero Trust and Threat Intelligence decoys, it's recommended that you use domain names that resemble deprecated and vulnerable services so they appear easier to compromise. Next, we recommend using your own certificate instead of the default self-signed certificate. It's also recommended that you leverage dynamic application datasets. These allow the attacker to interact with the decoy as though it were a real web application, making the decoys more enticing and helping you collect information on the tools, techniques, and processes that are targeting your organization. One of the downsides of public-facing threat intelligence decoys is that they will create a lot of alerts for reconnaissance activity that have a low risk attached to them. It's recommended that you create an orchestration rule to auto-delete safe events. This will filter out noise and ensure that your security teams can focus only on real high-risk events. For network decoys, since Deception Standard allows a maximum of 20 decoys, it's recommended that you concentrate network decoys in a single network segment. This will increase the chances of attackers interacting with them and being discovered. Network decoys should also be integrated with Active Directory as computer objects in order to make them look like legitimate domain-joined systems. This serves to both make them more convincing and to make it possible to detect AD enumeration activities and AD-related exploits on these decoys. When assigning IP addresses to decoys, you should use addresses from production IP ranges that match the type of server the decoy is meant to represent. Next, you should make sure that you customize the landmine installer name and description to disguise it as a different service on the endpoint. This will avoid tipping attackers off to the fact that you are using deception. For endpoint decoys, we recommend creating separate endpoint decoy group policies for each department in your company. This allows you to tailor endpoint decoys to match different user profiles. For example, seeding credentials for finance systems on endpoints for the finance user group, but not the engineering user group. For file decoys, you should configure safe processes such as EDR or antivirus processes so that they do not trigger the decoys when scanning these files. Finally, it's recommended that you maintain a dedicated test environment, such as a virtual workstation, to test and validate deception decoys and rules. Validation is a key part of ensuring that decoys work as intended and that monitoring and alerting are functional. Since security testing tools require a more permissive endpoint policy, Keeping dedicated workstations for these tests will make validation easier and avoid compromising security on your team's production workstations. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.